Okay, let's dive in. Today we're looking at a really cool bit of RC history vintage hop-ups.
Yeah, specifically those parts for the classic Tamiya buggies. We're talking Frog, Grasshopper, Hornet.
Exactly. And we're zeroing in on Parma dual wheel adapters, part number 12868 for the front and 13002 for the rear.
We've got some technical notes, enthusiast reviews, basically digging into what these things actually were.
Right. Our mission really is to figure out what they do, what they fit, and maybe the surprising parts, what happens when you actually use them on an old buggy.
It's not always straightforward. There are definitely some trade-offs.
Okay, so let's start with the parts themselves. Parma, hashtag 112868, that's the front one.
Yeah, for the front spindles. The non-driven ones on the Frog, Grasshopper, Hornet, you know, where the wheels have bearings in them?
Ah, right. So this adapter, it replaces the original nut, lets you bolt on a second wheel.
That seems to be the idea.
Yeah.
The outer wheel would need its own bearings too, of course. Parma's ad just said wide wheel or more traction.
Huh, simple enough. And finding them new old stock, still sealed, that's pretty neat for collectors.
Definitely. Then there's the hashtag 13002 for the rear. This one's for the driven axle.
Okay, so it has to work with that Tamiya B5 hub, the sort of star-shaped drive thing.
Exactly. It needs to connect to that somehow,
Yeah.
and then also connect to the outer wheel to transfer the power to both.
Got it. So made for those three buggies initially, but compatibility, does it stop there?
Well, direct fit pretty much needs that specific front spindle or that B5 rear hub. But there's a twist with the front one, the hashtag 12868.
Oh.
People have used it on the Tamiya Conhead, that 6x6 truck.
Wait, the front buggy adapter on the rear or middle axles of a 6x6 truck? How does that even work? The Konghead has hex hubs, right?
Right, and this is the key bit. It wasn't used on the axle hub. They put the inner wheel on the standard 12mm hex first.
Okay.
Then they used the hashtag 112868 adapter to bolt the outer wheel directly to the face of the inner wheel.
Ah, so it acts like a bolted spacer between the wheels themselves.
Clever. Yeah, it shows you can adapt the hashtag 12868 to standard hex hub models if you're willing to bolt through your inner wheel.
Interesting repurposing. Okay, what about the rear one, hashtag 13002? Any other potential fits?
Well, because that B5 style hub was used on other Tamiyas, it likely fits the rear of the CW01 chassis.
Like the lunchbox or the Midnight Pumpkin.
Exactly. Those share a similar rear setup. But something like a Sand Scorcher with its totally different 5-bolt wheels, probably not going to work.
Right, different system. Okay, compatibility makes sense. Now, the big one, performance. Why bother with duals? What's the upside?
The obvious stuff, really. More rubber on the ground means more traction, especially good on, say, sand or really loose dirt.
Bigger footprint.
Yep. And a wider track means more stability, less likely to roll over, plus better flotation on soft stuff. And let's face it, they look pretty mean.
They do have a certain look, so sounds great. More grip, more stable. Where's the catch?
The reality check. And it's a big one for these old models. First, you're adding a lot of unsprung weight.
The weight the suspension has to handle directly makes it react slower.
Much slower, less effective. You also massively increase the rotational mass. Think about spinning up 2 wheels per corner instead of 1.
Slower acceleration, slower braking, more strain on the motor.
Huge strain. Motor, speed control. But the real danger is the drivetrain.
This is the critical part, isn't it? Those vintage gearboxes.
Absolutely. The Frog's diff, the Grasshopper and Hornet's simple solid axle setup, they were not designed for this kind of load. Doubling the wheels, doubling the grip, doubling the weight.
Especially if someone throws in a modern brushless system or LiPo battery.
Oh, yeah. That's asking for trouble. You're putting brutal stress on gears, axles, everything. You massively increase the risk of stripping gears or breaking something. It's just a lot for them to handle.
Okay, so major drivetrain risk. What about just, driving it, handling?
Well, front duals make the steering heavier, obviously. Rear duals can sometimes cause understeer, tons of grip at the back, not enough at the front. Turning radius gets wider, too.
And costs need double the wheels, double the tires, extra bearings.
Right. It adds up.
Any quick tips if someone does install these?
Just the basics, really. Clean everything, use the right screws, make sure nothing rubs, check suspension travel, full steering lock. Remember bearings for the outer front wheel with hashtag 1103868, and make sure hashtag 13002 is properly seated on the drive hub.
Okay, let's wrap this up then. Parma, hashtag 12868 front, hashtag 13000 rear, cool vintage parts for the Frog, Grasshopper, Hornet.
With that interesting Konghead adaptation for the front one, potentially fitting hex hubs wheel-to-wheel, and the rear possibly fitting CW01s.
Pros, definitely traction, stability, looks cool, great for sand runs.
Cons, Really, really tough on those old drivetrains. Plus handling changes, extra weight, extra cost.
So for collectors, especially new old stock, fantastic find, piece of history.
Yeah. But for modders, people who want to run them hard, you have to understand that drivetrain risk. Maybe think about gearbox upgrades if you're using modern power. And you'll probably need to gear down smaller pinion gear.
Or, just get a modern 12mm hex conversion kit if you only want different wheel options. Less hassle, maybe.
It's certainly an alternative path without the specific dually challenges.
Still, these Parma adapters really show that vintage RC ingenuity, trying to get more performance out of the available tech.
Pushing the boundaries back then.
So what really jumps out, is it that image of a buggy with fat dual tires digging through sand, or is it the wince thinking about what it's doing to those old gears?
Probably a bit of both.
It definitely makes you think, doesn't it? How do you balance that love for authentic vintage parts and mods with the mechanical realities and the potential for breaking irreplaceable bits? Something to ponder.